optimism is a choice, right? If you are a business leader, there's always stuff to be freaked out about, right? Even when things are going well, there's stuff to be freaked out about. And if things, God forbid, if you're having a bad day, there's a million things to be freaked out about. And I think it's interesting because you first learn to be a manager before you learn to be a leader, if you could say it that way. And a lot of what makes for good managers is the ability to troubleshoot, which is a nice word for saying freaking out about the thing that hasn't gone wrong yet.
Yeah.
And that's important, but what's more important as you rise into an actual leadership position is choosing optimism. And not empty, foolhardy optimism, but I don't know, strategic optimism that's built on, confidence that you have in the strategy that you've put together and the team you've put together.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Shon Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we look at optimistic leadership. What we've learned in talking with this special guest today is that optimism is a choice. And I want you to think about that every time you're faced with the pessimistic approach, the worst case scenario, or what could happen, and the hope of that. And if you are a leader expecting to inspire and motivate and really develop the people in your team, you want to be more optimistic than pessimistic for sure. So today we unpack optimistic leadership with our special guest, Shon Rathbone. He's the CEO of 3Headed Monster. They are a digital agency working with tomorrow brands. He explains what that is, but in our conversation about optimistic leadership, we dive into why it's necessary, how he does it, and sort of some of the things that get in the way of that optimism sometimes. And it really will give you a full picture of optimistic leadership is you see it as a choice. My name is Shon Hammett. I am an executive coach. We work with fast growth companies. Most of our clients are on the Inc. 5000. In fact, we've worked with more Inc. 5000 companies in the terms of leadership development than any other company in the world, because we really have dedicated to understanding fast growth and the dynamics of that and the adaptability, and developing the CEOs and the executive teams and the managers in that journey requires a higher level of leadership. As the company grows, more leadership is needed. You're probably feeling that now because you might have some people problems. And so if you're curious about how we serve and what we're doing, and you just think that you'd like to be able to engage in this world, your next step is to check out the executive virtual conversations. So if you're an executive at a fast growth company, you can come in and talk with us and share with us and learn from others. It's not just me, it's other CEOs and the executives of these companies. Some are clients and some are just people who've been on the show before, but we invite them in once a month. And if you go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations, you'll be able to sign up for the next one if it resonates with you. If not, wait for one to sign up, or just sign up in general and you'll be notified so that you can put it on your calendar every month when we do these executive virtual conversations. You can invite other executives from your team if you can't make it, but the point is we grow together, we connect together, and I want to serve you to be the best leader you can be. Just go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. Now, here's the interview with Shon. Hey, Shon, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Gene?
I am fantastic. We're going to have a great conversation about optimistic leadership. Before we get into that, tell us about 3Headed Monster.
Well, 3Headed Monster is an advertising and branding agency. We're focused on something we call tomorrow brands, which we define as any brand that's working to make tomorrow better for the people they serve. They tend to be disruptors, they tend to be innovators, or just trying to make a difference in the community in some important way. You sort of know it when you see it.
Love that. Marketing changes so fast. AI has been the, kind of the word of the year this year, and it's impacting marketing in some ways, good and bad. Where do you think the market for your clients and marketing specifically is going to be in the next 3 years?
I think, 3Headed Monster was kind of built in rebellion to the big holding companies that sort of dominate the advertising space. I spent many years working for a couple of them, and they were good to me. I learned a lot. But what they struggle with is innovation. They buy innovation, and it's big and it's clumsy and it's expensive. And the real trick isn't getting all those capabilities in-house. The trick is getting all the disciplines to work together well. right? So and I think that will just continue to be the thing. As change happens, you need a culture where the disciplines collaborate very organically, and that's really what we were built to do. And it just continues, whether a few years ago it was digital, as if that word meant something, and then social, and then this, and then that, and TikTok, oh my God, and the world's AI. There's going to be, technologies forever changing. Our business is, based on communicating through technology. So it's going to keep happening. What you have to do is build an organization that mutates and changes as part of the design, frankly. And as you bring in different skill sets and as people evolve, make sure they're all playing together nicely.
And you guys have about 80 employees, is that right?
No, we're at about 36.
Okay. I don't know why I have 80 on my notes here, but
I don't know. That's a lot.
you're made the Inc. list multiple times. And I know doing that is not always easy, especially when you've got to hire people and you've got to work when economies are tough. What do you think really creates the success that you've had there at 3-Headed Monster?
I think it's understanding that, and go back to your thing of AI, that just the one thing that is a very precious resource is creativity. And I use that word very broadly. It doesn't just mean having a cool idea for a commercial, but I mean strategic creativity. It's being able to see around corners. It's having a sense of improvisation that is educated and strategic, and it continues to be a difference maker. And no matter what happens in the industry, smart clients are always going to pay for a handful of smart people who can help them think things through.
Now, agencies are always trying to attract the best talent. I had a client of mine who once told me they want to be the best company in the Atlanta market, but they also want to be able to attract the best talent. And they were able to do that. How do you attract the best talent for 3-Headed Monster?
It's a couple things. I mean, for starters, we have a pretty good creative reputation in the Dallas market where we're based. And if you are interested in doing work that you're proud of, the list is short of places where you're going to go, frankly. And we're one of them. So that certainly selects to some extent. But I think beyond that, I'm a big believer in mentorship and our whole culture. All of our leaders, if we have anything in common, we're all very different, but we're definitely a culture of mentorship. We take it seriously. We find talent, we develop talent, we give it an opportunity to shine. And you can't fake that. Word gets around if you're serious about it. And there are some people who are bright enough to know that matters more than other things. Certainly at a point in your career, and that has helped us a lot.
I love that answer. It's not just about being known in your market, but it's about really developing the people. And that's got to go a long way. I know in our research of 3-Headed Monster and what makes you guys successful, this phrase comes up quite often. You haven't mentioned it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up, but optimistic leadership. What is that to you?
It's a choice, for starters. Optimism is a choice, right? If you are a business leader, there's always stuff to be freaked out about. Right. Even when things are going well, there's stuff to be freaked out about. And if things, God forbid, if you're having a bad day, there's a million things to be freaked out about. And I think it's interesting because, you first learn to be a manager before you learn to be a leader, if you could say it that way. And a lot of what makes for good managers is the ability to troubleshoot, which is a nice word for saying freaking out about the thing that hasn't gone wrong yet.
Yeah.
And that's important, but what's more important as you rise into an actual leadership position is choosing optimism, and not empty, foolhardy optimism, but I don't know, strategic optimism that's built on confidence that you have in the strategy that you've put together and the team you've put together.
This reminds me of a conversation I had with someone who didn't hire me. My core business is executive coaching.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to this guy, getting to know him and his business. And he's like, you know what? Everything freaks me out. I'm like, all right, what impacts that have on your sleep? And he's like, oh, my sleep's terrible. It's been like that for 3 or 4 years. I'm like, oh, well, why do you always think the worst? He goes, well, that's just the way I plan, the way I do things. And we just discussed like the cost of that and whatnot. He did not understand that optimism is a choice. He was choosing pessimistic no matter what.
Can't do it. You can't lead that way. You can't, it's easy to be a cynic. Winter always comes, everything dies. Cynics are always right eventually, but you can't lead that way. You really, who wants to follow that person? If you think about, two-term presidents in recent history, we'll throw out a couple names, Reagan and Obama, from different ends of the spectrum, so we don't offend anybody. What did they have in common? They both had a knack for getting in front of an audience and helping you see a future that was a little better than the one you're living in today, and I think that matters. You can't be a snake oil salesman. Like I said, it's got to be grounded,
Mhm.
because people smell that. But I do think choosing optimism and choosing to see a path that's worth believing in and working toward is a big part of the job.
Now, Shon's been talking about choice. Now, in my coaching, it comes up quite often where we look at something that looks like it doesn't have a choice, and I get them to see that it is choice. One example that comes to mind is one of my clients is always pushing hard, and they tend to do really well every time they have a campaign or they have a project online. They tend to do really well, top 1%, if you will. We look at these across different factors and we measure it across different companies, and it really is truly 1%. But yet this client struggles with being patient. And I said to him many times, what if patience is a choice? Now it's beginning to really sink in, and he understands it and he catches himself earlier. But I remind you, everything's a choice. If you want to be more optimistic, it's a choice. If you want to be more patient, it's a choice. If you want to be more direct, if you want to be a kind of leader that people want to follow, it's a choice. And you've just got to be intentional about that. I give you a lot more tools inside the work we do, but I wanted to bring that up because I think it's important for you to understand that no matter what you're facing, it's all a choice of what you're experiencing, and you choose to experience it, whether the good or the bad. Back to Shon. I would imagine this is something that was fairly natural to you, or did you learn this along your journey?
Well, the truth is, I didn't. One of my business partners pointed this out to me about me not too long ago. I think it's just something that naturally evolved. I've been in a leadership position for most of my adult life, and I probably didn't have this figured out earlier. But I think I have become that leader over time. And upon reflection, I do think it's something I do differently than other people do.
And is this something that you're able to connect with others that you're developing and leading to get them to think more optimistically?
It's an everyday struggle with some people, because some people are like your friend, where they just, they love seeing the glass half empty, and it's just how they're wired. And you can have a little fun with that sometimes, a bust their chops, and people are usually pretty self-aware, and other people just need a nudge, But
Yeah.
yeah.
I know I joke with one of my clients that the CFO's job is to say no to everything.
Right.
And he's like, well, why is she so pessimistic? I'm like, she's keeping you safe.
Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. This is not, some empty cheerleading sort of thing. I'm not that person. Anyone who worked with me would tell you I'm a pretty no BS type of, and with our clients too, I just tell them how it is. But that doesn't mean, that you can't see a path. You have to see a path.
I'm wondering if there's a story or example of leadership where optimism played a critical role in getting to the result you're looking for. Does something come to mind?
There've been a million little things. I guess the most dramatic one, you were sharing a story before we got on about your own past. There was a point in 3-Headed Monster in 2017 where we really about went under. Like our one big client was funded by a venture capitalist who was shut down by the federal government, and the checks stopped coming, and we had a staff and a payroll, and we dragged our feet on cutting costs and laying people off, and it was, man, that was a rough year. But like that is as an entrepreneur, when I thought the first couple of years were tough, and then after about 9 months of success, we hit the real rough patch, and it was very tough sledding. But we hung in there, just again, not out of some empty cheerleading belief, but like I believed in the vision of Three-Headed Monster. My partners believed, I believed in my partners. We believed we were a small team, but I believed in the talent that we had put together. And I really believed there were clients who needed what we were doing and that we were a little different. And it panned out. That was the first year we won Ad Age Small Agency of the Year, and immediately after that win, a bunch of new clients came in, and we were off to the races.
I have a theory, comes up quite often in my coaching,
Yeah.
that life happens for you, not to you.
Mm.
This isn't something I developed. It actually comes from Jim Carrey. But whenever I look at someone who went through a hard time, 2017, government comes in, makes some changes, you lose your biggest client, whatever the reasons are. Can you see now how that happened for you as an agency and a leader?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's the old cliche, but stuff that doesn't break you makes you stronger. I mean, it's a terrible cliche, but it happens to be true, you know. And that was definitely one of those times. And even the partnership, it's, sort of like a rough patch in a marriage if you make it through. Like that we're just tighter because of it, and that pays dividends down the road.
So good to be able to reflect on those sometimes. And I have to remind my clients of all the things that they've overcome, because
Yeah.
they can get into that less than optimistic
Sure.
perspective, because all they see are the things that are not done yet.
Sure.
Do you ever have that issue? Because in your world of being a CEO of a growing company, you never get caught up.
No, it's maddening. I mean, you're never, ever. It's funny you mentioned your friend who has trouble sleeping. I do too, but it's easy for me to go to sleep at night, but I wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning, just like,
Yeah.
But it's because I got a bunch of stuff I can't wait to get to,
Yeah.
which I think's the better version of that. But yeah, no, you're never done. You have to learn how to every once in a while just shut the machine off and walk away. You have to, for self-preservation, but you're never done. You learn to keep juggling. You also learn, I'm a morning person because in the morning I can do this stuff that no one else sees that I know is really important. And once I walk into the office, I know I kind of belong to everybody else. And I have to respect that to an extent and be a resource for them. And these are the things you learn because it's never done,
Now, Shon just said something that has come up quite a bit in my coaching and even in my world. You're never done. As a CEO and as an entrepreneur, you'll never get caught up. There'll never be nothing to do. There'll never be, just all white space. There's always things to do. There's always places where you need to evolve. Maybe it's your own leadership. Maybe it's getting the team back aligned. Maybe it's a new project. Maybe it's a new innovation. There's always something. And you want to make sure that you understand that and embrace it. It's not to be something you fight against, but just accepting that everything's changing and adapting, and that you change, the company changes, the culture changes, everything changes. Back to Shon. Shon, we've been talking about optimistic leadership. It's a really important aspect of leadership. How do you get someone who is not aligned with optimism the way you are to be able to see that optimism is a choice?
I think you have to just let them wind it out the other way. It's okay. Let's play your game. That's cool. So worst case scenario happens, and then the worst case scenario happens there. So should we just close the place? Should we just shut it down now and cut our losses? Like I think there's a certain, and I've done that in conversations of like play it out to, all right, like let's play your game. Let's play it your way. Like let's vision board your way. And see what decisions we make out of that, and it's crippling if you do it too much. You have to be aware. You don't want to get over your skis, as they say, but you can't lead that. Who would follow you? Like, I think you can only get away with that if you're part of an organization where they're drafting off someone else's optimism. Yeah, if you're actually the boss, I don't think you can get away with that for long. Who would follow you?
I agree. The lead by example is another one of those cliches that, okay, yeah, we get it. But when you're pessimistic by default, it's not a great place to come into work.
It's not a good way to live, for starters. Like, it's just a human being. It's not a good way to live. But you can't lead. Like, you can manage. There's a distinction between being, a manager of people, which can look like leadership to the untrained eye, but you can't lead that way.
Well, you bring up that comes up quite a bit in my coaching. What is the distinction you have between managers and leaders?
Well, you start with that. I mean, I do think an important skill set in learning to be a manager of things and people is learning to troubleshoot, right? Which sort of teaches you to be a pessimist a bit. You have to a bit. So that's and then you have to like sort of, okay, I got all that. I know all the things that could go wrong, and now I have to imagine a world where they don't all go wrong, right? As you rise up to being a leader. But I also think leaders start caring a little bit more about the team than they do themselves. They start sharing credit a little more. They look up beyond today's to-do list and look at, the year's to-do list or next year's to-do list. I think they have more of a strategic vision. That sounds corny to say, but like you have to have a broader view. You have to like see beyond today's headaches, is part of it.
I love that. And it reminds me of one of my clients who went through, we have a leadership on-ramp program. So a young manager, he goes, I finally get what you're trying to teach us. That at one point in time, I was the MVP and I strove to be the MVP of the team because of what I knew.
Sure.
Now my job is to make others the MVP of the team.
That's right. That's someone who's making the transition. I used to, there was years ago, not 3-Headed Monster, there was a guy who worked for me, and his annual review was always the same thing, which is you need to stop being a renter and start being an owner. Like, knock it off. Like, quit going down the, that's the other thing that, like, when you start, like, for better, for worse, this place is mine. Like, this team is mine. Like, I have to fix the problems. I have to lead by example. I have to grow the people. I have to make them better every day. I need to care as much about their career as they do. Those are the things that start to make you a leader.
So we've been talking about optimistic leadership. Is there anything else you feel like we haven't touched on that really helps people understand why that's such an important aspect of a fast growth company?
I mean, for starters, fast growing company is a good way to frame it. It's really hard out there. Like, there's a bunch of smart people trying to kick your ass every day. Like, there really are.
Yeah.
And so you've got to believe that you're going to set the world on fire. Like, you really do. Like, you watch a NFL game, those guys have got to believe they're the best player on the field, or they got no shot, and you watch fighters go into a ring, like, you have to believe you're going to win the fight, or you got no shot. So I think that's part of it. You have to absolutely believe that your thing is going to make a difference, because it's going to require just a ton of work and energy and passion to beat everybody and achieve the things you want to achieve.
Shon, we've been having a great conversation about optimistic leadership. I appreciate your time. Appreciate your insights.
You bet. Fun.
Wow. I love where that interview actually ended. When we talked about the difference between managers and leaders, and he started talking about the real aspects of leadership, I think he's spot on. There's a distinction between managers and leaders that you've got to get straight as your company grows and scales, and your people have to become leaders if you want to be able to rise up and develop them into the people that you need them to be as the company continues to grow and scale. To me, I've seen this quite often in companies that just aren't doing that well. So that's one reason why we created the podcast and created our executive coaching and leadership development across these companies. So if we can help you in any way, make sure you let us know. As always, in the courage. We'll see you next time.